Hi everyone, Ben here, and I'm going to be going over some photography editing tips and tricks, specifically editing in the RAW image format. Now, if you're not familiar with the RAW format or haven't used it, I would like to compare it to cookie dough versus a baked cookie. Cookie dough is the RAW format. The JPEG would be your baked cookie. You can't unbake a cookie. All the information has been compressed down to a usable file for your social media post or publications. RAW images, or the cookie dough, allows you to shape, add chocolate chips, whatever you'd like. Just don't add raisins because then it's not a cookie anymore, it's a fruit. But anyway, I shoot in RAW plus JPEG, which will save both image formats down to your camera's memory card. If you want help setting this up, give me a call or shoot me an email at 812-322-1923 or bturner@hepn.com. Let's get to it. First, you want to find your RAW image file. For Canon cameras, the file format will be .cr2. For Nikon, it will be .nef. So double-click the image file and it should open up in Photoshop. So here's our first image. It's an underexposed photo of a sunflower from my garden. So let's start with the exposure slider. This is going to adjust the overall exposure of the entire image. So you can see with this slider, you can raise or lower these levels as you want. So we're gonna raise it up to somewhere around here to brighten up the yellows in that. From here, you've got a lot of options. You can adjust the highlights, which is only going to adjust those parts of the image. So if you want to bring in some of that detail in the background, you can lower that a little bit. Now the middle of the flower, we're losing a lot of detail in that brown, so you can use shadows to bring that up so you can see more of that in the image. Now the flower still seems a little dull, so you can brighten that up with the vibrance and saturation settings. The vibrance, try not to overuse this, but you can crank that to bring more of the yellow back into the flower. The saturation slider is really going to add a lot of color, and a lot of times people overuse this. You don't want it to look too colorful or too saturated, so be careful and don't raise that slider too much. From there, it looks like maybe this is a little bit blurry in the middle. I want to bring more focus, so you can use these sharpening sliders down here. Now, the more you sharpen, the more it's going to introduce noise, so we'll use these two sliders to adjust that and fix that issue. So here we'll try to sharpen that up a little bit. And when you do, you can bring the noise slider up, which is actually going to soften that noise a little bit. But when you're done with this image, go down to the open, click that, and that will actually open it up in Photoshop. From here, you can do any other fine-tuning you want to do to the image, and then you can save it as a JPEG for use in your publications or social media posts. So now we're going to try and fix an extremely overexposed sunflower. Let's see what we can do to bring a lot of this information back into the photo. So we're going to start again with exposure and bring that down. As you can see, a lot of that color and image information is already coming back. What you will notice, since it was extremely overexposed, there are still a lot of highlights of information that is still gone, and you're not going to get that back, but it's already a lot better. So from there, you can make other adjustments to the shadows if you want to bring more of the shadows in. I think it's okay that way. The highlights, you can bring down some of the highlights, adjust contrast as you see fit, and we can add some texture to maybe bring a little bit more focus to the flower. And clarity will also help with that, but I think that's too much. You can adjust the vibrance, maybe bring more color into the image. And there you go, we turned an unusable image into a very usable image. From there, you can open it up in Photoshop and make any more adjustments you would like. So let's do one more overexposed image. This time the background is completely lost, and we're going to try to bring that detail back along with improving the color and brightness on the kitty. So as you can tell, if you adjust the overall exposure to bring the background back, in, you're gonna lose highlights on the cat to the point where you can't even see her eyeballs. So let's just bring that down a little bit. And now we're going to adjust the highlights. We're gonna crank the highlights all the way down and the whites all the way down to bring some of that sun back so you can see actually some of the garden outside the window. From there, the cat still looks a little dark, so we can try to raise the shadows a little bit to bring her up. As you can tell, that actually helped quite a bit. You can also adjust the contrast up or down depending on what you're going for in the image. I think we're gonna bring it down some. Then you can actually bring in some texture to sharpen maybe the hair, whiskers on her face. And same thing with clarity. But be careful with clarity, it's gonna add a lot of detail maybe you don't want in the image. Dehazing is also gonna work for exterior skies and such. It's gonna help repair overexposed skies. So we'll adjust that a little bit. And this is all just fine tuning to what you want the image to look like. So now we did bring up some of the dark in the cat, so you can't really tell now, but it's probably a little grainy from having to bring that up. So we can actually go down to the noise reduction and bring that up a little bit. So again, this just goes to show you the power of shooting in RAW. So if you were trying to edit that image in a JPEG format, all that information is already gone and you won't be able to get it back. So from there you can open it up into Photoshop and save it down to a JPEG. So here's an image of a spaghetti squash bloom, and as you can tell, the white balance and color balance is way off. It actually looks pretty cool, but we'll make some adjustments to make that yellow look more like it looks in real life. So you can see up here at the temperature, it's way down in the blue. So if you just drag that slider a little bit, all that color of the yellow comes right back. So other than that, I wouldn't do anything to this image. That's just a quick color temperature change. You can drag it all the way up, all the way down, whatever you see fit. So I kind of like it right in there. And that's about all you've got to do to that image. Here's a macro image of a Clematis Bloom. So as you can tell, there's a lot of detail in the petals that we want to bring out. The exposure and everything's pretty good. We might brighten it up a little bit. And once we get into Photoshop, we're going to fix the cracks in these petals to make it look perfect. So let's start with texture and see if we can bring out some of the texture in that. And right away you can tell that makes a big difference. With the texture, you can really see it pop. The whites, I'm going to brighten it up just a little bit so it's almost glowing a little bit. Other than that, I'm not going to do anything to this. So editing in RAW doesn't have to be much. It could just be a few simple steps. So now we're going to bring it into Photoshop and fix the cracks in these petals. So there are a couple different ways to fix these cracks. I'll show you both of those now, and I'm not sure which one is going to work better, so we'll just see. First one is the clone stamp tool, as you can see here, so go ahead and click on that. You can adjust the size up here and you can bring that down. Also, I would reduce the hardness, maybe 50-60%. It's going to feather the edges, so it won't be noticeable when you fix this stuff. So go ahead and do that. Now on Windows, you're going to hold down the Alt button and it'll bring up this little crosshair. So click on something nearby that looks like it's similar to what we're going to fix. So while you're holding down Alt, go ahead and click there and then bring mouse over and just click and drag until looks like everything's fixed. That looks pretty good. I can't tell. We're going to do the same thing up here. Hold and click an area and then click and drag. Oh, and see, it went off the edge there a little bit, so we're going to click here and bring a little bit up there. Maybe here's a small imperfection you want to get rid of. There you go. Can't even tell. So the other way to fix this, hopefully, is to use the spot healing brush. And with that, you don't have to click anything with Alt. You can literally just come over to the parts you want to fix, click and drag over that part of the image. That didn't work as well. I can kind of see where it's a little blurry there, but it's a quick fix. And you can do the same thing up here. Boom. Piece of cake. There's your perfect clematis. So here's the back of a spaghetti squash leaf. It's a macro image with a really cool water droplet in the middle, but it looks pretty dull, and we want to bring out a lot of this texture on the back of the leaf and also increase the saturation and overall look of the image. So let's maybe start with the vibrance. Let's bring that up a little bit. That looks pretty good. Maybe the saturation just a tad. You can see now we're getting some blues in the water droplet. And texture is really going to bring out those cracks. So let's raise that as much as you feel like. I think the more the better on something like this where you're really trying to show the texture in the image. I'm going to bring the whites up a little bit. As you can see, when I do that too much, it's overexposing this part of the white. So keep an eye out for that kind of thing, for overexposures and underexposures. You can mess with the shadows. Kind of like it at 0, it's fine the way it is. So now I'm going to take this into Photoshop, so when you go ahead and open it, we're going to get rid of some of these spots so we can really focus in on the water droplet and the texture in the leaf. So now that the leaf is opened up in Photoshop from the raw settings, I think we're going to try to use the clone stamp tool to get rid of some of these dark spots. So again, alt click off somewhere that you think, so it's a little blurry in here, so you may want to pick somewhere where it's kind of in between that blur, somewhere up in here, and click that, and then when you come down here, just drag a little bit of part of that. Same thing down here, it's a little blurry. You don't want it to repeat, so you may pick an area over here a little bit. That's not bad. You'll probably notice the changes you're making to this, but when people just look at the image, they won't see it. Here's kind of a blurry spot, so we'll just try to color over that. That looks pretty noticeable. So we're going to bring the hardness down on that and try to redo that. That's better. You can do the same thing here. Alt click a spot and clean up the bits of the image that you want. We're not going to do all these, I just wanted to show you what you can do. So there's a spot we'll fix. Here's a little bit. So I think that's a much improved image over the original, and from there you can just save it down to a JPEG. Okay, for this image, we're just really gonna try to highlight the iris and the colors in the iris, which you can't tell in this, but it's a full rainbow from red to purple. And we're gonna desaturate the rest to really make the iris pop. So we're not going to do a whole lot in the raw settings here, maybe just brighten it up a little bit, the whites, and maybe take down the contrast a little bit. And add a little texture, bring out some of that. So now we're going to open this in Photoshop and make some editing decisions there. So now that it's open in Photoshop, we're going to use this pen tool to outline the iris of her eyeballs. So you can just click to make points, click and drag to make curved. So we're just going to do a rough outline of the iris. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'll show you why in a second. So you close that out. And then you come over here to where the path is and hit this button and make it a selection. And put a feather on it, maybe 20 pixels. This will help smooth out the edges when we apply the effects to it. So go ahead and hit OK. Now we can adjust just the iris portion of the image without messing with the rest. So let's go ahead and go to Image, adjust the vibrance and see what that does. That's starting to bring out colors in in her eye. Hit OK. Now we want to desaturate everything on the outside of this. So you can go to Select, Inverse, and it will allow us to make changes on the outside. So we can go back to this adjustment. We can do hue and saturation. We're going to desaturate the rest of the image to really make the iris pop. Go ahead and hit OK. So that's all you need to do with that. If you're working on headshots or portraits for either directors or employees for your website or a publication, I'm going to show you some techniques you can use to fix those images as well. We're going to see if there's anything I can do to fix this image. It has a lot of problems, but we'll do our best. As you can see, the color balance is off. Maybe we need more light on my face. We want to change the background contrast, exposure, all that. And then we're going to fix some of the blemishes, maybe wrinkles, teeth whitening, that sort of thing once we get into Photoshop, as well as cropping options. So let's get to it. As you can see, the temperature is kind of blue, so we're going to bring that slider up a little bit to bring more of this natural skin tone in, just a tad. That looks pretty good. And we can maybe raise the shadows a little bit on my face. See, that's a little better. We're starting to bring in a little bit of noise the higher you go there, so we can go down to here and increase that noise reduction a little bit to soften it out. From there, I think we're good. So let's go ahead and open it up in Photoshop. So let's start by cropping the image down to the only part we want to use, which is just the headshot. We want to get rid of most of the other image. So over in your toolbar, you will see the crop tool. Once you click on that, you have a lot of options up here at the top, whether you want a 4x5, 5x7, 2x3, 6x9 image. I think we're going to try this 5x7. From there, you can click and drag the area you want to really focus on just the head portion of the image. So let's just go with that. Once you're good there, you can just hit this check mark and it will crop that image for you. Now we're going to whiten my teeth a little bit, and this is one technique. There are probably others, but I use this one the most. So down in your color picker, you want to set the foreground color to white and click OK. And then you want to hit your brush tool, and here's where we'll make some adjustments. Up here, your hardness, you're going to want to bring that down, maybe 33%. We'll just try it, and you can adjust the size here as well. The key here is to adjust the opacity, because we don't want just to paint white over the teeth. We want the teeth and the texture of the teeth to still come through. So let's try really low, like 15% opacity. So zoom in on this image a little bit. And from there, you just can click and drag over the teeth. To get the desired effect you want. I went off into the lips a little bit there, but that's no big deal. And there you have it. So let's zoom back out. That looks fairly natural. Maybe it's a little too white, but again, that works. Now we're going to fix some of these blemishes and spots on my face, going back to what we talked about earlier using the spot healing brush tool. So we've got a couple spots on my forehead, just drag over those spots. Freckle there we want to get rid of, maybe a few of these hairs. Maybe I need to shave. This is all up to you. You obviously don't want to take parts of people's face away that makes them who they are, but you can get rid of blemishes, forehead wrinkles, and things like that. I don't know what this is, but it's gone. Now we're going to use the clone stamp tool to try and get rid of maybe some of the gray in my beard. So again, alt-click the part of the image you want to use as the template. So there, we got rid of most of my gray. So now we're going to try to get rid of some of these wrinkles under my eyes. For that, under your spot healing brush tool, we're going to use the healing brush tool. And this works more like the clone stamp, where you select an area that you want to use as the template. So I'm going to click down here, alt click, and then come up to the wrinkle and just kind of drag over that. And the wrinkles are gone. Do that. And now I look 10 years younger. So as you can tell, there's a lot you can do from the raw image settings, and then once you get into Photoshop, there's a lot more you can do to edit images. So I hope these photo tips and tricks were helpful. If we want to do this again with real world co-op images, we can do that. If you have specific images you would like me to work on that I could edit and share with everyone, we can do that as well. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good day.